Welcome back, Day Camp friends, to Season 2 of the Day Camp Pod. I'm Andy Pritikin, Director of Liberty Lake in the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson, Crystal Lake Park District, northwest of Chicago.
And we have got a stand-in for our man, Aaron. We have got a proxy from Camp Robin Hood. Introduce yourself, Howie.
Hi, I'm Howie Grossinger. I'm the co-owner and co-director of Camp Robin Hood, Canada's oldest private day camp.
Off the bench to hit a home run, we are sure, right? And we are joined today also with my man, Will Pierce. Will, say hi to everybody, Will.
Hey, Andy, thanks for having me back. It's interesting. We are the oldest private day camp in the United States, so it's kind of good to have us on the same show there, Howie.
Absolutely. Kindred spirits here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We are day camp professionals joining forces to provide a forum for day camp pros to share ideas and best practices across North America and beyond. So for today's timely podcast, we will be discussing best practices in debriefing your past season with your leadership team, something we all should be doing this time of year. And we got Will and we got Howie. I know that I got this idea primarily, I have to say, I was at a Voce thing, like could have been 10, 15 years ago, sitting next to Doug Pierce, who is Will's uncle. And he told me about this CPR thing they do, complete program review. And when Doug says something emphatically with confidence, it makes you think you really ought to be doing that. And I immediately started doing that kind of thing. But before we get started, I just wanted to tell you that this podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, the fine purveyors of waterfront splash pads and all that kind of stuff that sprays you and gets you wet. I got a water trampoline at my camp from them. Check them out at crs4rec.com. CRS is serious about fun. So anyway, I took the Doug Pierce idea and I brought it back to me, and I have been sort of just piecemealing it a little by little. But it's certainly an important thing to do. I feel that most camp directors and top leadership team that we're under the gun. We're on fire all summer and we're running around and we're putting on fires, and, you know, to use the Stephen Covey quadrant thing, like we're in that first quadrant of just trying to get things done and get them going. And we forget that this is the time that we can really be taking good notes and to really make ourselves better for the future years. And, you know, we employ a lot of school teachers, and I'm a former school teacher, so not to badmouth school teachers, but school teachers get used to it being a certain way, right? Oh, well, that's just the way we've always done it, and that's the big deal. And they get that way because, you know, from my experience, you bring a really good idea to your principal, and they tell you that they're not going to do it because it costs too much money or whatever, and it's done, right? But meanwhile, when you're in a camp, you could be making changes on the fly. You don't even have to be waiting till the fall to make a change. You could see something in week 1, and you could change it for week 2. Right. And that's something that I'm constantly trying to get across to my team. And I try to get them to write stuff down, you know, and that's not for type A people, it's we do that. Right. But for type B people who are actually the really super creative people, they tend to not write things down, which drives me nuts because I like having a list of things at the end of every single day that I could fix for tomorrow. And certainly I want to have one by the end of the week, by the end of the year. So I use a Google Doc, like my own personal Google Doc, note sheet, and I just keep them going and I keep tallying them. I organize them in various ways. And it's pretty funny when the season's over and I look back at all the ideas that we had from our debrief of the summer and then from our leadership meetings throughout the year, how much we actually get accomplished. It's really amazing. Like, we really don't just run it back. I sort of wonder if we'll ever get to a point where I just run it back. It might be easy, but it probably won't be as fun, right? So anyway, that's sort of the scoop, and at Liberty Lake, we do have a meeting. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. And, we invite basically our top 36 people will be there, I think. Our head nurses, our head leadership people from all the different areas, the office and all that kind of thing. And we try to do a semblance of what I inferred from Doug Pierce, which I'm going to throw the ball to Will Pierce, the proverbial giant. Well, don't drop it.
Yeah, no, great. I got it. Doug will be thrilled to hear that you do that. It's actually still a very big core part of our kind of off-season process and leadership team involvement that we do. So we call it CPR, which stands for Complete Program Review. And the way we look at it is it really starts, like you said, most important thing is in summer. We call our list the glitch list, which is anytime something comes up during the summer. That glitch list is almost a misnomer. Like, yes, things that go wrong or could have maybe gone better are there, but it's also anytime someone comes up midstream with an idea like that could be done better. So oftentimes we'll be sitting watching some event we've planned and say, it would really be better if, and it can be simple things like we brought the kids in from the right instead of the left, and there can be things that are much more complicated than that. So my assistant director, her name's Cindy Geller, she is actually, one of her titles is keeper of the glitch list. And everyone on my staff knows, if you have an idea that just comes to you in the middle of camp, how we could do something better or something that went wrong, go find Cindy and put it on the glitch list. And ours is a little more old school. It's like a black and white marble composition journal that she keeps, and then she transposes it into a document.
That's all right. No technology, baby. And I love the glitch list, because one of my pet peeves is when we run it back the next year, right? And here we're doing like our first day of camp thing, and then something happens and you go, oh my gosh, like we screwed this up last year too.
It's the worst.
No one put it on the glitch list. Right.
Yeah, it's the worst. So the glitch list is great for, as you said, we're all running around, 1,000 miles an hour, and there's stuff that if you can fix it at the time, that's always best, but sometimes it's just not possible. So it kind of starts with the glitch list, our CPR. And what we really try and look for is when we get all these kind of like cross touch points of when we discover issues, on prioritizing what we should tackle as well. So then we also obviously do, like every camp probably does, a parent survey, which sometimes informs us areas that we want to dig into. And then for us, the magic of the complete program review really starts with what we call our staff program survey, which every leadership person in camp, so we're a big camp, so we have, just over 1,200 campers, over, 500 staff, and we will have those complete program review documents filled out by every group leader in camp, and every head specialist, head lifeguard, someone that runs an area. So all kind of like my adult leadership staff will fill those things out. So there'll be like 85 different documents, and each one's about 30 pages.
Holy crow.
Yeah.
30 pages of paper?
Yeah, of paper, because we are tech free here at Pierce. And yeah, we did it online one year, and it was a disaster. My people were like doing it from home and just rushing through it. We found they actually did a lot better with the paper.
And so I'm your head lifeguard or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Do I get this 30-page document in the mail, or am I handed it on the last day of camp? Like, when do I get this?
Yes,
when do I get this?
Yeah, you get it in the powering at a meeting in week 7 during your lunch break. We all have a little picnic together, right? And we give them this document. And now you don't have to fill out all 30 pages, but it basically gives you a chance, if you're a specialist, to give feedback on every group or every age group that you see, because sometimes feedback is really specific to just an issue with 5-year-olds or lower camp or whatever else. And then also the inverse of that for the group leaders, where they get the chance to give feedback on every specialty area that their children go to. There's a copy of their schedule attached, give any feedback that they'd like to see changes or additions to their schedules. And also there's a list on special events, the food we serve, kind of like every little area of camp. And what we tell them is, anywhere where you have feedback, please give it to us. And then it's kind of based on how your staff is. I have my staff that will fill out every single spot on that form with all of their thoughts, and even if just to tell us like, this was great, I loved it. And then I have my staff that 70% of it's blank, but then they give me really good detailed stuff on the 30% of areas where they have feedback. And that's kind of what we capture in season, which is a decent chunk of information. And we also jokingly tell them that they'll get their final paycheck once we have their complete program. And that's how we ensure 100% collection of this information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think my staff does like it, because even though they're busy at camp, it's their opportunity for their voice to be heard. And they know that we're doing it because the follow-up we do in the off season, where me and my co-director, Courtney Pierce, my cousin, and then all of the leadership staff, we read through every single one. And then we do a 3-day retreat with our leadership staff, which is not as big as your get together, Andy. It's about 12 of my leadership staff. And we'll actually be making phone calls in there to ask them questions about details. We'll send them an email from there, knowing that we have the next day for them to get back to us. So I think over time, the fact that they know that they're being heard and then they'll see changes that we made based on that really empowers them to enjoy it. And whenever we make a change based on a suggestion, I'll always, when I get back to my office, give them a personal phone call or write them an email and just say, hey, you know, you and 3 other people brought up this idea. We're making a change this summer. I'd love to have you involved. You know, bringing in the who. So that is kind of like the structure of how we gather the information and what we do with it. And then in that CPR retreat meeting, we kind of task it by what I call what, how, who, and when. And then the final step of that is what I like to call the why, which is making sure when we change something, everybody understands why we change that thing. Or sometimes why not? Sometimes we'll get like a really popular suggestion that people that are not in the administrative level don't see like why this seems like a good idea at your level, but in reality might cause a lot of other problems you're not aware of. And we like to go out of the way to explain why not. So that part's a lot of work, but the good news is we get to do that part in October and November when, as camp directors, we have the opportunity to really give all of that feedback its proper due. And that's just kind of there's a lot of other details, but that's kind of the big picture framework of what Doug told you about 10 or 15 years ago that we call CPR Complete Program Review.
Wow, that is super impressive. I got a couple questions. Anyone else have any questions before I jump in here? So you say you and Courtney are looking at these 500 some odd 30-page thingers, right? And you're doing this
it's not 500. So it's
whatever.
85 of them, but yes. Yeah, it's like 400. It's like at 400 pages of reading, roughly.
No. But I'm saying, right. But so you don't send them out to every staff. You only send them out to certain levels.
To my group leaders and my head specialists.
Okay, so the top 85
people. Feedback from like the general counselor staff through their staff evaluation forms, which I look at a little later in the year, like around probably December time when I'm starting to offer contracts, and I'll pick a few things up out of there. But my meaty kind of generally best kind of recommendations and solutions come from that 85 or so people that are my what I consider my leadership staff. Gotcha.
And then of course you have the glitch list too that you're incorporating.
Correct. So in that retreat, it starts with the glitch list and the parent survey results and those staff program surveys, those 3 components. And then we look at the intersections and we start with the ones where there's themes of areas that can be improved.
Wow. This is a serious commitment to improve. I got to tell you, it's really awesome.
Yeah. And credit goes to Doug. He always says, you know, like you said, will I ever run it back? And Doug's answer would be, you know, hopefully you never just run it back. Hopefully you're always trying to find some way to improve, even if it's, you know, changing the cups in the dining room because, you know, they're compostable now and they're going to, you know, be a budget savings, even if it's a small thing. You can find something.
And then everybody has ownership for what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, a big organization like us, we have to try really hard to make sure everyone feels that.
It has a voice.
Yeah.
Wow. So the 3-day retreat, you guys literally like go off somewhere?
Yeah, we do. Because we used to try it in this office and, you know, we run a preschool also.
Always get bothered. Yeah.
The radio's going off. There's a phone call that's urgent that wasn't that urgent that comes in, you know, all that stuff. So we drive out east to Greenport on the North Fork of Long Island, you know, in the off season, October and November, usually first week of November, second or third week of October. And we do 3 days, 2 nights in a hotel that has a conference room there. And we basically spend like, you know, they're long days. We'll get the coffee going, start 8 a.m. and go to like 6 p.m. just like plowing through all of these things. We make everyone read their sections in advance and then bring the findings to make it a little more efficient. So we can spend most of the time actually digging into, you know, the rest of it. And yeah, so it ends up being about 3 days of work, 2 nights. And then we do like team building stuff. We do, you know, drinks and dinner each night, which is a nice way for us to get together socially too. So it serves kind of 2 purposes.
And what does this room look like midday, day 2? Are there like giant, huge Post-it note things like on the walls and stuff?
Yeah, there's a whiteboard. I have my laptop because I'm keeping the running like task list of the kind of the what, how, who, and when type of thing. going, and there's paper everywhere. That, you know, because we've cut everything up and dealt with everybody, and then by like the end of the third day, there's like lots of candy wrappers and empty coffee cups, and it's, you know, what you'd imagine, but the room is no great shakes. It's just like,
So in regards to the you said what, how, who, when kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because like this is all great, and you can have, you know, 30 great ideas that come from this, let's say, right? But then they got to get executed.
Correct.
Right. So how do you integrate that into tasks for people, and do you put timelines on things and such?
Yeah.
So Doug Pierce started the idea of the complete program review, and this is something that I can say is a Will Pierce thing. When I started doing this, leading these kind of about 7 years ago, which the one thing that used to drive me crazy like you is sometimes I would see something happen to someone and be like, we covered this at CPR. How did the 3-on-3 basketball tournament not have enough time to finish again, right? So I started doing it, and it's kind of what my job has become. Courtney kind of will moderate a lot of it, like, okay, now we're moving on to this age group or whatever. And I sit there, and I have a little Excel document where I start with the what's, like we go through to identify all the problems first, and then I'll have a list of the what's. That's like, hopefully by the end of the day one, we've got through all the feedback, and we have all of these are the items we'd like to address, and we'll kind of prioritize them, hopefully before we leave day one. Then day two, it's hopefully, all right, how? Some of these things will have no solution. I'll be like, listen, that's not something we're going to be able to necessarily improve. And then there'll be things that there is a how, great. So then by the end of day two, we get to the how, which is a lot. That's the most fun day. That's like the creative day of like, how could we do this better? Maybe if we did it this way. And I have people representing all different areas of the camp. So, you know, head of aquatics, head of sports, all the different age supervisors. So everyone can give you their side of it of, you know, how it might work better for this area or not. And then once we get a list of what's that also have hows, now we're in pretty good shape. Then day three is the day everyone hates the most, which is the who and when day, where I look around the room with Courtney and we're like, okay, this is going to be your item. You know, Paul head of, you know, aquatics, this is your item, and we want it done by this date, so we have enough time to deal with this or everything else. And so by the end, we end up with, it varies year to year, but somewhere between probably 30 and 60 actionable items of how we can improve camp with people's names and dates next to them. And then I send everyone's least favorite email probably once I do it about every 2 months with an update on who's finished their tasks, where we are with tasks. And that goes, and I try and have everything on that list finished by 6/1, because as you know, once June 1 hits, it is what it is. And we're going.
You're on.
It's over, Johnny. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. I'm sweating just listening to all this.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that was awesome. Before we keep going, so Pierce is now 101 years old?
We finished our 102nd summer.
102. Yeah. All right. And what did you say Robin Hood was, Howie?
Next year is our 75th season.
Holy smokers. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I just got back from the ACA resident camp tour in Maine. And I think all but one camp that we visited was 100 years old. It was crazy. Right?
Amazing.
Like the last camp we were at was Kohut, and they literally have the color war plaques from 1912, 1913, 1914 with the captain's names and everything on it.
Amazing.
Like, oh my gosh, I was waiting to find one that was in the 1800s. But we didn't get there. But anyway, this Go Camp Pro podcast is sponsored in part by the American Camp Association, New York and New Jersey, which has awesome stuff just like those tours. But of course, their big mama is the Tri-State Camp Conference every March down in Atlantic City, where I get to see all these people. Hopefully we'll see Sam one day.
Yeah.
Take the journey.
I'm working on it.
Chicago. Right. So anyway, Sam, let's toss it to you.
All right.
What do you guys do at the end of the summer?
Well, I feel much better now because we do a much simplified version of what Will was talking about, but I'm glad that I'm on the right track. So first thing I do halfway through the summer is I get all the new counselors together and ask them, what do you know now that you wish you would have learned at training? Because training is always an ongoing changing entity. And so I'm always trying to figure out, did I prepare them right? Did I not? What did they want to know? But then the last week of camp, we go out to breakfast, and the whole leadership team each gets a sheet, which I put in the show notes. Very simplified, but you know, what, who, what, where, and why about training, about, you know, total, what camp gear do you want next year, what field trips, all that kind of stuff. Because again, I can set things up, and then if it's not perfect on the ground, then it doesn't matter. So I need them to let me know. So they do it individually. The
And
purpose,
when does this take place? What point are we in the summer?
the last week of camp, we go out to breakfast, and they get their individual sheets.
Gotcha. Right.
And then they've got some time to fill them out. But I hope that by giving them to them while camp is going on, that everything's still fresh in their mind, and hopefully they'll start writing. I do the assistant directors separate from the directors, just because they're younger, they have new and different ideas, and I don't want them to be intimidated that they had to do what their director did. And then we meet to come to consensus throughout the year. I'm lucky that my directors work year round with me, so I can still meet every month to prepare. So, and then the counselors get an end of the year evaluation of camp, but it's much more general. There's room for writing, but it's not give me every detail about what you think we should change like it is for the leadership team. So.
Gotcha. So, so what about in the off season? So now it's the fall. Do you guys,
Okay.
I mean, are you the only one that thinks about camp in your organization at this point?
No, actually, I just had to finish all my brochure for next summer. It was due last Friday. But I started a before and after school program immediately following camp. So mid-September, it starts to settle down, and then I switch back from school to camp. But my directors are here still. They're still working for me. So we start meeting like every couple weeks, ironing out some of the suggestions. And I do on my trips in January or December. So.
Yep. We're camp people.
Yeah.
You know, someone told me that I was telling them the plight of the camp professional, you know, with our holiday kind of schedule. And they suggested that, you know, we go on vacation in, you know, November, December, January, and we just go to the Southern Hemisphere, you know, go down to like Argentina, Brazil, whatever, where it's summertime, you know, Australia, you know.
Australia, for sure.
I was like, yeah, it's only 30 hours away, but sure. You know. All right. So Robin Hood, Howie.
Yeah. Well, we like our winter, so we're going to stick around in November and December and January for sure. I kept on smiling. Will's account of their process is something that is similar to what we do. There are many features with different names that he described that we do, and we have a leadership team of, I guess, 15 to 18 core people every year that meet in the fall. And the 1 or 2 day retreat, depending on the year, is really a combination of, for us, we don't want to lose an opportunity to celebrate all the great things that happen. So while a lot of features of what Will described are things that we do, are 40 to 50 what we call senior staff, all people in leadership at camp fill out a report, what's called an area report. Aaron Gluckstein does produce an online form for that they do. And just like Will, you got to get your keys in, you got to get your walkie-talkie in, and you got to get your report in, and then we'll get your paycheck to you. So very similar approach because it's such a critical component of wrapping up the summer. But we do give out that area report in the 5th week of camp. So many things happen over the course of staff training and the first few weeks of camp. We don't have an expectation in the craziness of the first few weeks that they'll start the reflective piece. But we find in week 5, once major programming has been completed, once they've had a handle on seeing all the programming executed, it's really a good time for them to start the process of thinking about feedback, because if we wait 7 or 8 weeks, you know, we have found that they miss stuff, or sometimes they're asking for, can I give this feedback earlier? And of course they can do it through a conversation, but we really do want their thoughts down in some form we can reflect on. The glitch list that Will referred to, we call it our fall discussion list. That's what we call it.
It's much more Canadian.
Much more Canadian. But invariably on a daily basis, just like all of us, you know, we look at issues that come up and we decide, is this something we want to change for next week or tomorrow, or can it wait and be part of the fall discussion list? So we do keep a running list of things that we know will be addressed in the fall. And our meeting is, depending on the teacher schedules that our leadership team people have, will be in either October or November. And we pull out the fall discussion list. But our meeting, similar to Will, is really an assessment and sort of reflection on what the parents have given us as feedback through their surveys and what our senior people have given us. And we definitely go through an exercise of celebrating all the great things we implemented and how did they do and were we happy with it. And then as camp people, we tend to be very hard on ourselves and we tend to sort of, you know, drill down on those things we definitely want to change. And yes, our meeting definitely incorporates that. And then we kind of get provocative with big ideas and will this fly? And we pitch things that our director team may not have discussed with anybody up until that point, and just throw out topics that we may want to, hey, do we want to change staff training schedule? And what if we flip day 3 to day 1? And, you know, those kinds of things are a good time in the fall to really get sort of big picture, sort of big items that may rock people's world in terms of tradition and stuff. And then we get sort of, we get the temperature of how the group is feeling about how that might be received. So that's a big piece for us. I made a note, you know, we don't, in our situation, you know, our team doesn't get too solution heavy in the fall. We start to explore those things, but we meet every month starting in December. So we table those ideas to agenda items throughout the off season in our monthly meetings. And then we tackle the assignment of who's going to work with that, et cetera. So we spend a lot of time just formulating the vision for the following summer. And then we table through an agenda forming process, which meetings, December, January, February, or March, will we tackle either a programming issue or a staff training issue. And we try, I typically quarterback sort of that process. Although my wife, Sari, you know, brings in a lot of ideas into the process. As Will mentioned, she's responsible for making sure everyone's really well fed during the weekend retreat. So everyone's brain is hopped up on sugar and ready to give ideas. And so we definitely tag team the leadership of that meeting as it goes forward. But we find, and traditionally, not unlike what Doug did many years ago, you know, Sari's dad, Larry's been doing this for 60 years. You know, he's the guy who always found the value of, as we all do, but continuous improvement, you know, turning something slightly on their head. And we find that the fall get together allows people to decompress. I find the time between the end of camp and when that meeting happens is a really healthy time for some real sober thought, and the reunion of all of us getting back together is so amazing. You know, I think some of us haven't seen each other in 4 or 5 weeks. It just makes the energy of that formal get together super powerful and super productive.
I agree. You know, I tend to think there might have been a time, you know, 30, 40 years ago where Larry Bell and Doug Pierce were hanging out at a bar outside, you know, at a conference. Yes. You know,
well, you know, Doug and Larry have shared many moments together comparing notes. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Sounds about right, I would say.
No, there's no doubt. You know, I went to visit Banner Day Camp once out in Chicago, and I saw all these great ideas that I thought were brought to me by some of these luminaries that had obviously spoken to them, or vice versa, right? And taken it from either way. But, you know, that's a good part about these conferences. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing, Hallie. That's great.
Yeah,
so in regards to the task things, getting the tasks done, I'm just curious, I have a lot of friends over at Ramacoy, and they're very big on software, and they use various task apps and things like that. I was curious if any of you guys in your organization use anything like that to help get all these ideas to come to fruition.
I know for me, I've sort of tried to use a variety of tools for that. Haven't really latched on to everything. We find that paper and email and updates through Google Docs and stuff like that tend to work much better for us. Although there is a running joke about the use of Google Docs because of people's proficiency with that. So, but we haven't done anything like Basecamp or anything like formally, but I've tried to sort of play with it and see what kind of reaction I get before we jump right in. But we're pretty traditional around the meeting time, the check-in, those kinds of sort of traditional sort of digital ways of doing things.
Yeah, well then you must have a type A person at the helm, there's no doubt, in order to see them through, like you said. And Google Docs, that's our main thing as well. And Lord knows if somebody's, it drives me crazy when people start another Google Doc just for no reason, Well, it's so cluttered with Google Docs.
Yeah.
I was excited when I realized you could attach documents to Remind, because that was about the only way I got, the counselors to read them.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but there's no doubt if I feel like society and all the things that we do is so complicated already. And when you throw another one of these things in, and unless it's all that somebody uses, but the fact is, if you're a teacher, you probably are using Remind, right? You probably are using Google Docs for whatever reasons on the side. And you just throw in these third and fourth things, and it's just another thing I have to check, another thing that's sending me notifications, reminding me that I want to go, I don't know if I need that stress.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely how I feel about it. I keep everyone on task through email, and I just keep the Excel document, and I update it at intervals, and people know those intervals, and then I send it out, and I say, if you see anything else you need to add, let me know. Then they email me, and I kind of like having control of it that way, and I very much feel that way about sometimes having like too many different apps and expecting people to get involved with that can put some stress on them. Especially when a lot of my staff are busy being teachers during the year. I feel like that's what my winter is really for as a director. I can kind of run the organization part of it, and it gives me a chance to do one-on-one interaction with them, whether we do an update on a phone call or on email, because sometimes the answers they give when we're trying to make sure tasks are getting completed aren't as simple as like check completed. It's like, I did this 3/4 of it, but then this came up and now I have to do this. And it's like, okay, great. I want to know about that. And I'm a little more old school in that way, even though, I'm 35, but right. I'm not sold on the benefit of some of those apps. But I don't know all of them either. So
right.
My friend tried to get me into Slack, and I didn't like it.
I know. Yeah. I find that, I appreciate all the time that my leadership team members give me throughout the year, that I just try to make a concerted effort not to put more on them in terms of those elements of software or tools that are online that they can use. Because I know that because we are dealing with so many teachers as well, they're getting inundated and so preoccupied with their own things from their school boards that if I can just keep it as simple as possible, there's something pretty grounded in keeping camp that simple too, even in the off season. And I think they appreciate that too. So we try the best we can to just keep it pretty straightforward, as often as we can.
Yeah, I think we can do a whole podcast on trying to get the non-year-round directors to do camp stuff during their quote unquote off season, right? You talked how we have having monthly meetings and such. And I know there are other places that do that, but there are certainly the predominance of people listening to this podcast, probably one-man shows, two-man shows, right? And if they want to get things done, they have to utilize these people who have year-round jobs, and keep them motivated and compensate them, fairly and all that kind of thing, so that, like I said, that's its own podcast into itself.
For sure.
All right, there you go, podcasters. I hope you learned a ton, and you can take back some of the stuff from Robin Hood and Pierce Camps. Wow, thank you, guys are so generous. If there's anything you guys do want to share, you could give it to our producer, Matt, who's been emailing you, I'm sure, and we can get that up on the Day Camp podcast website. So listen, we're going to do a Day Camp tip of the week. All right. So Howie, I don't know if you were prepped on this from Aaron, so you can go last. Okay. You can think about things while the first three of us go. But basically, we come up, we talk about an idea that the listeners can then just, utilize in their camp. Sam is the queen of coming up with stuff that costs nothing because she's running a high-powered rec program, right? I see Will's. Will's is an expensive one, I'll tell you right now, because I done it too. But anyway, that's the sort of idea with that. And the tip of the week, the Day Camp tip of the week is brought to you by our friends at AM Skyer, who have almost been around for 100 years. They're on like 99 and a half right now. And they are awesome partners, really, because it's not just about insurance, it's PR, legal issues, health, facility, all that kind of stuff. So check out the AM Skyer difference. All right, so I'm going to go first with my idea. This is something that I want to give credit to Everwood Day Camp in Massachusetts, where I'm partnered with up there, because I went and visited them a couple summers ago, and I saw they had a nice hill that sort of led to their lake. Yes, they're fortunate enough to have a nice lake. And you always get these ads as a camp director for this like Wet Willie, this giant slide thing, right? Which, by the way, it's illegal to have Wet Willie in New Jersey. It's a very tough regulatory situation in New Jersey. So as much as I would love to have anything like that, I can't do that. So I took this idea for Everwood, where I basically created like a crevice in the ground, made a giant slide in the ground, put sand in it to make it soft, go to Home Depot and get big rolls of the heavy duty plastic, right? I mean, it's actually like 12 feet wide or whatever. You can even like double it up. And so we make this giant slide into the lake. And by the way, it doesn't have to go into the lake. We've done this before in another part of camp where it didn't even go to a lake. It just went down a hill. We have one of those foam machines. So whether you use that or you just use like, baby shampoo or something to make some kind of suds, and you get a hose going on it, so you got to have that flowing water kind of thing. And then we go to the dollar store and buy tons of those inner tube kind of things that little kids would be playing with in their backyard pool. We'll spend like 50, 60 bucks on those, a bunch of those things. And these kids go flying down a hill and like giant lobsters and all that kind of thing. And you may think it sounds a little reckless and dangerous, and it borders that at times. But man, these kids, it's like, I think a lot of these kids, they live in, bubble wrap, right? And they don't really get to do stuff like this. And man, you get two kids on one of those things going down relatively fast and going headfirst into the lake. And it is old school, dirty, just a little bit dangerous, fun.
Right.
That's awesome. Depending on your theme, Andy, when we're doing our food fight, we put chocolate pudding on the slide. And when we're doing Halloween, we'll put washable red paint. So they're going through blood. It's Halloween.
Oh
and
my gosh.
yeah,
And do you guys
they
go
love
into your
it.
lake? You guys go into your lake too?
No, we're just down a hill. It's
Yeah.
basically a sled hill during the winter.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kids like getting dirty. They like all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we haven't had, we've done it for like 3 or 4 years now. We have not had any injuries, knock on wood. All right, Sam, it's up to you.
All right. Mine is if you have to wait for a bus or you unexpectedly get held up somewhere and the kids are getting bored, you split them into 2 groups and have them line up looking at each other, pretzel legs, and each group is a team. And then they close their eyes and hold hands with the people beside them. And you have one person who's it, and that person's going to start the electricity. And then at the other end, you have like a water bottle or a hat or anything. It could be anything. And you put it in the middle of the 2 last people. So the person starts them off, taps both shoulders at the same time, and they squeeze hands, sending the current down the row. And the last person to get squeezed then goes for what's in the middle. So when it gets down to the last person, they're diving for that water bottle, both of them. Whoever gets the water bottle wins, gets to be the tapper, and the one who lost goes to the end of the line, and they all scoot down and you do it again. So no equipment, and it's amazing how much fun they have doing this, and it can last for a half hour without any, depending how many you have in line, they all want to be it. They all want to get to the end.
All right. So how many people are in one of these lines generally?
We did it at staff training with like 20 people online, but if you've got a group of 10, 5 on each side is fine.
All right. But even if it's
Yeah.
20, I can see that happening. Okay.
Yeah.
So now each end starts the electricity, the squeeze, right?
Yeah.
So now the person in the middle that gets squeezed by two people, I guess, right?
Well, it's going down the line. So your squeeze will always come from your right.
Oh,
You
so it's only
squeeze,
going
then
one
you
way?
squeeze.
It's only
Yeah.
going one way? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
So
it's
the
going
guy
one
on
way.
the end will tap both, and they'll start it and squeeze the next one, and they'll squeeze the next one. And when they get to the very last person, then they dive for whatever's in the middle.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Sometimes they forget to open their eyes to dive for the water bottle, which is pretty funny.
Oh, because their eyes are closed while
Yeah,
they're getting
everybody's
squeezed?
eyes
Oh,
are closed while they're
that's an
being
important
squeezed.
component. That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I love it. That's great. And it also, it's the honor system too,
right.
right? Because you got to wait for that squeeze. Yeah. Well, if your eyes are closed, you would look pretty stupid if you lied about it, I guess.
Right.
All right. Very cool. That is a vintage Sam Thompson one right there. That's awesome. All right, Willie, what's up?
All right, so I might say something about the budget here, Pierce, but this is for me a lower cost activity, which we did, we did a color run, which the expenditure was buying the colored. It's basically cornstarch that's colored, but I think we did it with our upper camp, which was for, our seniors and up. So it was about 300 children, and I think the whole cost was about $300 to buy.
Oh yeah, well if you only do it for 300 kids, I thought you were going to be doing it for the whole camp. All right.
No, we just do it with the older kids. But it takes up, we basically make like a morning out of it. And what we do is we give the staff like super soakers and water, get the kids soaking wet as they run through, and then we give the other team, we break them up in two teams, the powder, and the idea is you have to complete an obstacle course while also getting this powder thrown on you, the different colored powder thrown on you. It's hard to see and everything. So we actually make a game of it. We break them up into teams, and they compete to complete the obstacle course and go through the color. And so the kids love, like with the other activity with the slide, they love getting messy. They're covered in all sorts of different colors. It photographs amazingly well. The kids love the photos. And they just love like running around and getting sprayed with water guns by the staff and covered in the color stuff by their friends. And then of course we get to hose off at the end. So that's also really fun too. So it's just in a big open field with lots of different obstacles that, we just use stuff lying around camp, tires, cones, things like that. And it's a good morning activity, and the kids really enjoy it. So
Morning activity.
yeah, we do it in the morning. We do it in the week 8 at the end of camp after Color War is over.
Uh-huh.
We let the older kids go out on senior field.
You let the colors merge, right? So that everybody.
That's right.
Everybody's a nice colored tie-dye for each other.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
So,
no, we had the same idea.
Where do you get that powder?
Well, this is the thing. You got to buy it. You got to buy it, right? You got to buy it from this company that
Sounds
does it, right? And I said it's not cheap because I did it for all 1,000 people, and it was much more expensive. And it's funny because the first year we did it, we were investigating it because no camps were really doing it then. This was like 5-6 years ago. And my program person, Brandy, she was like, wait a second, this is just cornstarch and food coloring. Like, she was like, we can make this ourselves. Right. And I was like, you really want to do this? And she's like, yeah, we got, everybody's back from college. We got all these extra people around. We'll just make it. Right. Now, meanwhile, we didn't have the color run scheduled until like week 2 or 3. Right. And we're making this like the week before camp starts. So we make tons and tons. It looked like Walter White's lab. Right. We're making tons and tons of bags of like blue and red and orange and pink. Right. And, we were putting it in one of our storage things, like next to our kitchen, like we said, empty area. It wasn't an air conditioned area. Okay. So now week 2 or 3 or whatever comes around, it's time for color run. And we go look at the stuff and it all had mold on it. It was like, bad idea. Should have just bought it. So then we had to buy it, and we've been buying it ever since. But it's a hell of a lot of fun. And like a really important point that Will touched on was it's worth whatever the cost is. It's worth it for the pictures, and it's unto itself.
Oh,
the pictures are spectacular. All
So I
right.
can just Google Color Wars and the company.
Color
will
Run.
come up?
Color Run.
Color Run.
Color
Yeah.
Run.
It's a nonprofit
Awesome.
organization. Yeah.
Very cool.
And whatever they recommend, like if you say it's going to be 200 kids, like kind of thing, they give you way more than you need. You could say it's like for 120 kids, it'll be just fine, whatever they say. All right. Because they come up with a little ratio for you that, makes you spend more money than you need. And what Will was saying, I love the obstacle course. That's a great added thing, to make it more than just a run in a circle or whatever. But it does, and I've done it with younger kids, and it does get in their eyes, right? So when we're going to do it, we usually tell the parents they can send their swim goggles, right? And then the kids do it in swim goggles, and they're totally fine.
We do the same. We have them wear their swim goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll
All right.
save a few phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah. All right. The caboose from Ontario.
Yeah.
You're up,
just
Howie.
on the fly.
You're on the fly. I mean, come on. You've been doing this for a few years now. You
I
must
know.
have a couple of things in the chamber.
Well, one of the things that has been sort of spreading like wildfire, that has been an amazing sort of community building thing at Robin Hood, has been what we call we do this with the youngest kids because they get the biggest thrill out of this, is the high five parade that they do. I don't know if you've heard of this, but we have counselors in an attempt to get the kids to see various parts of camp, people that they don't normally see. They don't always have access to see certain people at camp because they're involved in programs. We get them to come through the office in small groups and give high fives to, the office staff and to the maintenance staff and different people. And it doesn't cost you a thing, but I can't tell you how many phone calls we would get or emails saying, my kid had the best time because he met the maintenance guy and he gave him a high five and he got to know him. And I think when we're in a time where we want our camps to be so like well encompassed with everyone knowing each other, they've just made a really fun program, as simple as it gets, from these kids getting to know everybody in your operation. And I can't tell you how many kids find that a pretty memorable part of their session at camp. And they don't do it very often, but when they do, you can see how going into Howie's office or Sari's office or seeing Larry, who they see, occasionally at the buses, giving them a high five and spending moments with them are really cool features of their experience. So just a quick thing that came to mind that builds community, is really easy. And when your staff have a few minutes in their day just to fill between activity to activity, they're great things to throw in that we find the youngest kids really like.
And doesn't cost a cent. You've got to add that.
Yeah. And listen, we've been high-fiving because of the Raptor victory all summer, so we're really good at it.
So we do a similar thing at Liberty Lake, and when we do this, it's around the week 6 slump kind of thing, week 6, week 7. I don't know where I got it from. It was from a tri-state session, and it might have been like Steve McGuire, like a checklist of things you can do to spice up things, when everybody's gotten to that point of like, they're just, going through the motions a little bit. Right. And one of the things is like, it's a list of about 50 things. And we actually had a group that did all 50, like they got a prize by going through. And one of them was, go down to the kitchen staff and give them all high fives. And the other one's like, go to the office and do that kind of thing. And you're right. Like some of these people, especially at my camp, the kitchen people who are just sweating their butts off, working their tails off all summer, and people hardly know who they are. Like it is important, I think, to give them a voice, and a face, and make the kids know that they're real.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we overlook those opportunities, right? And we're as much into the wow factor like other day camps and try to deliver that when we can. But there's something pretty special about sort of these moments that we really like as well. Like, landing the helicopter to kick off Color Wars, we're apt to do that occasionally, but there's something really special about those moments too. And I think as day camp people, we just got to encourage our staff to look to those moments as well.
Yeah, connections. It's about connections, right? All right, well, thanks a lot, Howie. Thank you, Will. Thanks as always, Sam. And Aaron, I don't know how we made it through without you, but you sent in a good proxy.
Okay.
So we want to thank our executive producer, Mr. Co-Camp Pro, Travis Allison, our producer, Matt Hansberger, and the generous sponsors, ACA New York, New Jersey, CRS, Recreation Specialists, and AM Skyer for bringing this podcast to you. So if you don't want to miss an episode of the Day Camp Pod, you should subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever else you get your favorite podcast. Don't forget to show your love, giving us some nice ratings, reviews. Check out the show notes at datecamppodcast.com, and feel free to send us some feedback, send us some CPR, all right, and some new ideas for some future pods. Our email is daycampquestions@GoCampPro. I always mess this up. daycampquestions@gocamp.pro. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with some more interesting topics and guests to make you a better day camp professional, improve your day camp for your campers and staff, including our next one will be with Audrey Monkey, who is a resident camp director out in California, who's going to be talking to us about the awesome things she does to promote her brand and her camp's value. Very, very interesting. And her new book, Happy Campers. So thanks for listening. This has been the Day Camp Pod.